I hope my answer is not controversial, like Vijay being my favorite actor.
No, your answer that Vijay is your favorite actor is going to resonate across Tamil Nadu and get you into trouble in your country, not in ours.
LOLC Finance within Lapadena. Kitty Kali Stavara Tempadu.
Hello and welcome everyone once again to the India Today Conclave 2026, where we are joined by another very special guest. The West Asia war has literally hit home. And the first sign of that war hitting home was last week when an Iranian ship, which had just completed peaceful exercises with the Indian Navy off the coast of Visakhapatnam, was sunk off the coast of Sri Lanka. More than 80 Iranians died, and some of them are recovering today in a hospital in Galle and Colombo in Sri Lanka, which is why we thought we must have a Sri Lankan voice here as we look at various dimensions of the conflict. We are delighted to be joined by one of the prominent opposition faces and son of a family that has been in power in Sri Lanka for a long time. He's also, I can tell you, a rugby player for his country. Please welcome Namal Rajapaksha.
And also in Sinhalese to say Ayubuvan.
Ayubuvan.
I hope I said it right.
That's Vanakkam.
Vanakkam in Tamil, Ayubuvan in Sinhalese.
Absolutely. My colleague Nagarjun Dwarkanath is also with us. And I want to start, Namal, and the reason we have you here is you were the first voice who actually spoke out against the sinking of Iris Dena, the Iranian ship, off the waters of Sri Lanka. How do you see it now in hindsight? Do you believe that this was a brazen war of aggression, illegal to sink a ship which was clearly not involved in the conflict off the coast of Sri Lanka?
Well, I mean, it's a question of Indian Ocean identity, because Indian Ocean is known to be a safe zone, and that's one of the main reasons why global trade takes place mostly from our part of the world. So now there's a precedent. There's a precedent of a submarine attack on a foreign vessel. Whether it's a legal question or whether it's ethical, academics and politicians can debate for many years. But something that we must take into consideration is there is a precedent. There is a precedent in Indian Ocean where a foreign vessel been attacked. As I said, whether the action is right or wrong is to be debated.
No, don't debate it. You tell us where you stand. Is it illegal? Is it unethical that a US submarine torpedoes an Iranian ship which was doing peaceful exercises off Visakhapatnam just off the coast of Sri Lanka in the exclusive economic zone?
Yes, if you look at the legality of it, it can be argued as it is illegal. And the question is whether there is international law on today's context. Because if you look at what's happening in the Middle East or in the Gulf War, the international law and human rights or whatever they preached to us some time ago is to be questioned by themselves at this stage. So, as I said, academics can argue the legality of this, but moral values and the ethics and the practice of Indian Ocean clearly been broken. And that is something that we have to bring into dialogue. In our part of the world, are we going to allow it in the future, or are we going to make sure that we come on order to make
Who's
sure...
the we here? Is it Sri Lanka, India, all the countries which have a shared interest in the Indian Ocean, who should be raising their voice and not stay silent when the Americans believe they can get away with sinking an Iranian ship?
Well, see, there was a dialogue in 2011 with India, Sri Lanka, and Maldives, which initiated looking at MDA, maritime domain awareness, in our part of the region, and it was unfortunately slowed down at one point. And now I'm sure the countries are looking at establishing the Secretariat of MDA or the Colombo Security Council in our part of the world. And yes, I personally believe India has a major role to play as a great power and as a country which has the capacity to do so. But again, it comes to the question of morality, and I believe the region must get together and to make sure that we keep our region safe. Because I'll add something to this. It's not only about another nation. Because as you know, we went through we fought the terrorist organization for 30 years. And LTT had mini submarines, submersibles at that time, and they had 2 torpedoes. So the technology is not only with the governments or military, it's with other organizations as well. It can be any other organization, any part of the world, but the military technology is not going to be only with the governments in our region or world at large. So this is something about the identity of Indian Ocean. And this is where we believe the dialogue has to start
In fact, when you
all over
spoke
again.
about identity of the Indian Ocean and the dialogue has to be started, did the Sri Lankan government, or do you think the Sri Lankan government should have asked an official explanation from the US as to what exactly happened in your territory?
I believe so. I honestly thought that we will get explanation. We will ask for explanation from the authorities, from the US government, or at least the mission back in Sri Lanka, because we cannot walk away saying it happened in economic zone, it's not in our waters. And yes, Sri Lanka maybe doesn't have the capacity to detect a submarine. As you know, submarine can be detected only by another submarine. But we do have a right. It's a sovereign right of Sri Lanka. And we have a right to ask what happened. And the question goes back to the government of Sri Lanka, whether we knew about it or not. And that's something to be answered by the government of Sri Lanka.
And an island like Sri Lanka, how difficult is it to remain neutral considering a superpower is involved in this war?
Well, see, we have always maintained the non-aligned policy, and that's one of the reasons why we initiated in 1971 the zone of peace by Mrs. Bandaranaike at that time. Because conflicts and decisions made by so-called superpowers, because superpower is determined about with your military power and your financial power, will affect Sri Lanka countries, the island nations like us. And today, it is evident that it will not only affect island nations, but it will also affect the entire world.
You know, because there's a Reuters report, Namal Rajapaksha, that a US State Department cable has urged Sri Lanka not to repatriate the survivors from Iris Dana and crew from the Iranian vessel that is currently in Sri Lankan custody. Do you believe that the United States can use their hard power in this manner to tell your country, or indeed any country in the world, that on human grounds you cannot repatriate the survivors of a blast which you're admitting is possibly illegal and almost certainly unethical?
It is definitely unethical, and you can say, but it's how we react. And I believe Sri Lanka has a precedent in the past, how we have reacted in situations like this. And world has enough examples during the Second World War, if you look at how things like this had taken place. And I'm sure Sri Lanka must take our own decision on this.
What is your view? That should the Sri Lankan government tell the Americans, sorry, this is a matter of our strategic autonomy, that we will not be dictated by Donald Trump and the United States. We must repatriate survivors of Iris Dana on humanitarian grounds back to their country.
Yes, Sri Lanka has to make sure that we maintain our stand, that we maintain our stand on this, and also make sure that these people are safe, because it's happened in our waters. And now they are in Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka has a responsibility to make sure they are safe. And the practice is, in such situation, you don't repatriate until the war is over. So Sri Lankan government can make a decision on this. Anyone can request or give an order, but at the end of the day, it's how our governments take our own decisions for our own people.
And presumably India also has a role, because this was a ship which was engaged in peaceful exercises of the peaceful military exercises off the coast of India, was on its way back when this happened. So are you saying both India and Sri Lanka must make it clear to the Americans that you cannot unilaterally decide for us whether we will repatriate Iranian survivors or not?
Well, there has to be a strategic communication between the region, and to make sure that we all act as one, and also to take the best interest of each one's nations.
In fact, you also share a close relationship with Iran, and I'm told that many of your oil also comes from this Middle East parts of the world. And what is the crisis that Sri Lanka is facing? In fact, in India, we have seen people lining up in queues for cylinders and LPG shortage. Is Sri Lanka also facing this?
Yes, Sri Lanka saw it last week, actually, just after the war broke out in the Middle East. And this is where Sri Lankan government has to make sure that we plan ahead to see how we can face this crisis. Because, as you know, our number one tea buyer is Iran. And we are depending heavily on fuel coming from the Middle East. And one of our main revenue is foreign remittance coming from the Middle East and also tourism sector. So all these sectors are affected. And we need to re-strategize ourselves and to see how we can face the upcoming situation.
No, but if the fact is that the Straits of Hormuz have been blocked by the Iranians, as a result of which the entire energy security of several countries across the world have been disrupted, who do you speak to? I was hearing the ambassador saying India must raise its concerns about the West Asia war with Washington. Do you speak to Washington? Do you speak to Tehran? Do you speak to both? The problem is, how does any country in this extremely polarized world ensure some kind of neutrality? The Indians last week were seen to have moved very close to the US-Israel axis. Now we are hearing India saying Iran is a very good friend. So we pivoted in the space of a week because of what's happening with oil. How do countries maintain neutrality in a very polarized world? You're smiling when I say that. Is that the real big challenge? How do you maintain any semblance of neutrality? Do any of the South Asian countries have the leverage to tell Donald Trump, this is our Indian Ocean. You don't decide which submarine does what in the Indian Ocean.
Well, I mean, this actually happened in the Middle East, but still we are suffering from it. So it doesn't matter where it happens in modern context. And this is why so-called superpowers must realize and understand whatever decisions they make will have a big impact on the global economy as well. And Sri Lanka has always looked up to India on these kind of situations. I mean, if you look at the crisis we went through in 2022, in fact, India helped Sri Lanka more than IMF has helped so far, and even during the Ditwa. But again, the question is, how are we going to stop these kind of incidents, and how are we going to act? So this is where I believe there has to be a fresh dialogue within the region, and to see how, as a region, as Indian Ocean, to make sure that we keep our water safe, and also every government is answerable for their people.
And do you see India play a larger role in keeping this peace across the Indian Ocean? Do you think India should step up and maybe take the consensus of all the island nations around them and then take the communication forward?
Well, it has to be a collective approach, and I'm sure India can play a leading role in that because given the context of the economic capacity of India and also the military capacity India has.
You know, because I thought you were quite brave, or at least right, if I may use the word, in a social media statement. You were among the few who in this region spoke out right at the very outset when you said, Iran has always been a true friend, and I offer my deepest condolences to the families of all those who have been reportedly assassinated in the airstrikes. We stand with the people of Iran in this hour of need and call on all parties to exercise restraint and discussions rather than choosing a path of war. Now, most leaders in this part of the world have been reluctant, at least initially, to identify themselves with Iran. You are among the few. Do you believe that other leaders also need to recognize that at the end of the day, we need to have our strategic autonomy and speak out when there is seemingly a war of aggression that is costing civilian lives?
Well, of course. I mean, see, Iran has been a true friend to Sri Lanka for a very longer time. And we have had a lot of relationship with Iran, historical relationship with Iran. And war is brutal, and war cannot be accepted. And we feel how we have gone through a war for 30 years. We know how you feel when you go through a war. And to make sure that there is peace, the rest of the world must get together and make sure that, it is for the next generation that you're talking about.
So what would you tell Donald Trump if he was here at the India Today conclave?
Luckily, he's not here today, so.
What if he was? What if he was? What would you tell a Donald Trump? What would tiny Sri Lanka, if I may be allowed to say that, what would tiny Sri Lanka tell the seemingly mighty United States?
Do you have to use a Sinhalese word or English word for that?
You can say it in Sinhalese and then Nagarjun can translate.
I'd rather use a Tamil word only, you understand?
Yeah, so please do. What would you do?
Well, see, end of the day, they make decisions and they think they are superpower. They may be having power, they may be having financial power. End of the day, they also must understand whatever decision they make will have an impact on islands like us. So they might have got a mandate from their own people, as they claim to be. And they have to make sure that the world order is in place.
Perhaps you also see a future in Sri Lankan politics in the next 5 to 10 years. You come from a political family that has governed or ruled the country for many years as well. The recent 2022 crisis, many critics also say that it was Mr. Rajapaksa's presidency which brought this crisis. And in fact, we have a video and an image that, if I can ask my producers to play on the screen, of how the crisis looked back then, and then we'll have a word from you. And these are the rioters, in fact, people getting into the government buildings, trying to create arson, riots. Many critics say that it was your family that was responsible for this crisis and the economic slowdown. How do you see this? And what lessons learned, in fact?
You cannot take 2022 crisis as a single entry point, but you have to go back and see what has happened before that, and also what happened in the region after that. So, 2005 to 15, we were fighting a war, but we were one of the fastest growing economies in the region, and we had single digit in unemployment, interest rates were single digit, and we were growing at a fourfold of our GDP. Everything was going smooth, but then there was a government change in 2015. Certain decisions were made by different governments that is acceptable because every government make their own policy changes. Then East attacks were there in Sri Lanka. Then we came with the pandemic. As you know, 80 other countries faced a similar crisis after the pandemic, economical challenges. Then the 2022 Sri Lankan crisis came into place. And we strongly believe there was an outside hand operating in Sri Lanka to make sure that there is a regime change or government change in an undemocratical way, which we have seen in Bangladesh, which we have seen in Nepal, which we have seen in the region. So it's a different form of regime change. You can either bomb or you can either do it in another way.
So what's
it's
common?
how you interpret
Who's
it.
who's the outside hand?
Well,
Let's be clear, Mr. Rajapaksha. Your government, your leadership was credited with ending the ethnic war that had plagued Sri Lanka for more than 2 decades. Your family was also accused of serious corruption, of very, very serious corruption at the cost of impoverishing your country. So one of the two things, both could be right. You know, y'all ended the war, but the Rajapakshas were also accused of becoming authoritarian and totally corrupt. What will you tell the people of this country when they hear?
You asked me what
These
would
were
I-
the two narratives.
You asked me what would I ask from President Trump, right? So I asked him why did USAID fund, why did he make the statement of USAID funding in regime change in our region? It was made by President Donald Trump once he became the president about funding for regime change in our region. As to corruption, yes.
You're blaming the United States for regime change in Sri Lanka.
Not me. Donald Trump, president himself, has blamed USAID for that on his own statement when he became the president.
Okay, the corruption allegation.
So, see, there has been allegations, there has been cases, we have won in courts, and in fact, I must highlight one fact, what happened day before yesterday. There was a former official who was arrested on corruption charge for a Sri Lankan airline, some transaction, and he has given an affidavit, and he has informed the courts that the bribery commission DG in Sri Lanka forced him to enter a politician's name to the system, to his statement, and take the signature. So we have nothing.
This sounds like very South Asian. I won't go beyond that. This seems to happen.
See, you should investigate on corruption, but you shouldn't do it with a political agenda. And they were blaming us to have $18 billion in Uganda. And they were talking about we having a Buckingham Palace in America. So on political stage, campaigns, people come up with various allegations. But we are ready to face. As I said, I have told my government in Sri Lanka, if you need my statement or signature to go anywhere in the world and investigate on our illegal assets that we have, please feel free. I'm willing to assist you. But what happened now is to make sure that the lies they created during campaign, they want to prove it. So they are going beyond their limits to prove that.
And in fact, the southern part of India is seeing state elections in the next 4 weeks as such. What happens in Sri Lanka has ripple effects in the state of Tamil Nadu. Now there might be a government change or they might be pro-incumbency. How do you see the state of Tamil Nadu going into polls, and what are the relation that you have with the specific state?
Well, I think Sri Lanka must re-strategize dealing with Tamil Nadu because now the wartime has gone. It was long years ago. So it's time that Sri Lanka start a constructive dialogue. I mean, of course, we have a very strong bilateral relationship and people-to-people relationship with India and Delhi. But it's time our political parties, not only the government of Sri Lanka, but as political parties, that we engage with states in India, and especially with Tamil Nadu, because There is sensitivity with the northern election in Sri Lanka or south elections in Tamil Nadu, and Tamil Nadu economy is growing at a very fast rate.
In fact, there's an X factor that people talk about. It's Mr. Vijay entering the political scene. And I don't know if you have seen Vijay movies. What do you have to tell him? In fact, there are reports that there is an offer from the NDA party to ask him to come to the alliance and join them. As a politician, closely watching the Tamil Nadu politics, how do you see Vijay's entry into politics?
Well, if I tell him that I'm one of his fans and he's my favorite actor, it might go against for him in his elections. But but I think it's good to
Saying
see.
Vijay is your favorite actor.
He is my favorite actor in south part of the world and this part of the world. So he is a good actor, but he must also realize that politics is totally different from acting, and he has to face a real-time script in politics, not as acting. So he.
You know, the reason it's very interesting you're saying Vijay is your favorite actor. This actor, politician Vijay, has also called for India to retrieve Kachitivu. And India is insisting, or Vijay says the island belongs to India. India has also been suggesting on more than one occasion that Sri Lanka has been arresting and beating up and detaining fishermen from India near Kachitivu. So do you believe Kachitivu at least deserves a dialogue, or do you believe Kachitivu is Sri Lankan?
See, Kachitivu is a sovereign part of Sri Lanka, and it's part of Sri Lankan.
It's part of Sri Lanka.
It's part of Sri Lanka territory according to a 1974 agreement between Sri Lanka and India.
74, should we review it?
So it's up to the people and the government to decide on that, but not a state government. The dialogue should start from the center, if at all. And Indian fishing issue is totally different from Kachitivu. And I believe, if at all, if Tamil Nadu politicians are very serious about the relationship between Sri Lanka and Tamil Nadu as a state, I think they must address the fishing issue first. And that is something very sensitive to Sri Lankan waters, Sri Lankan fishermen as well, because even Sri Lankan fishermen get beaten up because of that, as to when it comes to their livelihood. And also Indian fishermen also suffers. If it's a question of national security for India, we understand. We understand the gravity of it, and we are cooperative in that. But if it's a political question, this statement is not the first time it has been made. It has been made by many politicians in South India for last so many years, ever since I remember. It's a decision to taken by the politicians.
In conclusion, we just have a couple of minutes, Namal Rajapaksa. We haven't had a SARC meeting in more than a decade. And that's largely because of Pakistan and cross-border terror emanating out of Pakistan. So I want to ask you very, very plainly, do you believe that SARC has outlived its utility and we need to find a new kind of South Asia body, possibly minus Pakistan, that can address some of these issues, whether it's the fisherman issue, whether it's an Iranian ship that is sunk off Indian waters? You cannot rely on SARC anymore. It's almost defunct. Do you believe it's time for a new kind of South Asian regional cooperation?
Well, there are many regional cooperation already taking place, and it's about understanding the modern context. Like as I mentioned earlier, Colombo Security Conclave is something that we have to take seriously with Sri Lanka, Maldives and India, especially when it comes to the Indian fishing issue, also the Indian Ocean MDA. But at the same time, yes, I think world order is changing, and we have to have a new approach to see how nations can work together to make sure that we address the interests of our own people. And this is what the countries like India or even Sri Lanka, Pakistan, we must understand, whenever we take a decision based on geopolitics, it will have an impact on all of us. And Sri Lanka has been a victim for a long time.
Has SARC outlived its utility, sir?
Well, the purpose of SARC still remains. But whether it's practical or not, a question to be asked.
Okay, last question.
Yeah, in fact, whenever we speak of Sri Lanka in terms of Indian perspective, the Chinese factor also comes into place, that you have given your port, in fact, for 99-year lease for commercial purpose, but India watches closely as to how Chinese is building infrastructure in Sri Lanka. Should India be worried of the Chinese influence in Sri Lanka?
Well, not at all, to be honest, because we don't have any military bases in Sri Lanka ever since British left Sri Lankan ports and aviation in 1957, if I'm not mistaken. And we will not allow any military presence in any country to be present in Sri Lanka, because we understand the gravity of it, and we do understand the security for India is important, especially this part of the world. And there may be lapse of communication in the past, time to time. But this is something that we need to work together with India and regional partners to make sure that we build this trust and mutual understanding. But yes, China has invested in Sri Lanka, and it's not our government who gave it to 99 years. We make sure they build it, but politicians take different decisions based on their government interest.
Final question and a lighter question. You're a rugby player for your country, but Sri Lanka's big sport remains cricket. You didn't do too well in the T20 World Cup. You're now going to get a new coach. Gary Kirsten's going to come and coach Sri Lanka. You mentioned that your favorite actor is Vijay. Who's your favorite Indian cricketer? You have a favorite Indian cricketer?
Well, there are a few. Abhishek is one of them now.
Abhishek Sharma.
Abhishek Sharma is one of them.
Who's going to be joining us at the India Today conclave? Anyone else?
Sanju is good, obviously, with last World Cup. But mostly I think,
He's also going to be joining us.
okay, so mostly Tendulkar. Because that's the era we started watching cricket with Sanat, Tendulkar, that generation.
Okay, so we hope that Sri Lankan cricket also rises.
I hope my answer is not controversial like Vijay being my favorite actor.
No, your answer that Vijay is your favorite actor is going to resonate across Tamil Nadu and get you into trouble in your country, not in ours.
Well, my country, it's not the case.
It's not a problem?
It's
Okay.
not a problem.
Okay,
Because
we'll
actually,
see.
in fact, my father and myself were going to watch his
It
movie.
might be a problem for Vijay in
Oh,
Tamil Nadu.
That I don't know.
In fact, I think he's waiting for his next movie, Jananayakan, which is not released yet.
Okay, let's leave it there. Namal Rajapaksha, as I said, you were the first politician from South Asia to speak out openly when that Iranian ship was sunk. And I think that required some element of political courage to speak out for what is most political and international observers believe was an act which was illegal and unethical. But I thank you very much for joining us here on the India Today conclave. Thank you so much.